it's Reija and welcome to another video. Today I am going to be sharing with you my September reading wrap-up, and it is actually a very short wrap-up this time because I only managed to read 3 things during the month of September. I'm hoping that October will be a lot better. So in September I was traveling, and after my travels to Chicago I was basically as worn out as a recently laundered sheet. So I basically prioritized watching TV and playing video games over any strenuous intellectual activity like reading. So I only read this much, but I'm glad to say that the books and comics that I read were actually pretty good. So let's get started. Starting with volume 1 of Given by Natsuki Kizu, translated by Junko Goda. And this tells a story of 2 high school students, Uenoyama and Mafuyu, who form a kind of friendship through music and possibly start to develop some romantic feelings as well. And they are together in a band with 2 other members who might also be getting their own romantic plot. This first volume is pretty much a lot of setup. You get introduced to a bunch of characters who no doubt will get more development in later volumes as their relationships get explored. So in that sense, this first volume feels a little bit flat because you are only getting like name dropped to these characters and getting like bare glimpses of their personalities. I think that once you start to like in the end of the volume, when you really start to see like Mafuyu's past and what he's been through and the kind of grief that he's like dealing with, you kind of start to see more this these possibilities between of character development and of like further storytelling beats that may be developed in later volumes. So that makes me excited, even though this first volume was very much a set-up volume. So I gave this, I think, 3.5 stars. It was very interesting and delightful, and I liked it. The art style is very simplistic. It reminds me of a lot of BL manga. Like, it's very... like, all of the characters are very, very lean and languid and pretty. It has that sort of like what I would call like kind of default elongated like fashion model type characters that a lot of BL manga has. Like all of the guys have the physique of like swimmers essentially, which is a very specific aesthetic in a lot of these stories that are directed mostly for a female audience. But yeah, I'm excited to be continuing on with this series. And then I read Delicious in Dungeon Volume 10 by Ryoko Kui, translated by Taylor Engel. And I freaking love this series, okay? I thought that it was funny and entertaining at first, and now I'm like ride or die for this series. It has some of the best fantasy world building I have seen in any story, like any book, like manga, anime, movie ever. Like this world building in this series would stand up with the greats of fantasy. I kid you not, like really. I think Ryoko Kui has this masterful take on like making these monsters seem plausible and real. Like she really understands anatomy and biology and makes these monsters seem very logical about how they would actually function in the real world. And then she also like takes these like basically Dungeons and Dragons type concepts of like these various like fantasy races, dwarves, gnomes, etc., and makes them into something of her own and like makes it a part of the lore, like how their physical differences actually are a sort of like they're in conflict with how they live. Like for example, you have these elves who live for a really long time compared to, for example, humans, and you can see that there's tension between their populations, and the elves are sort of very high and mighty and arrogant and look down on shorter-lived races. And there's also like interesting thing that there's like the races themselves are kind of, they're like more like species, and then you have like lots of diversity within the races. Like, for example, you have like dark-skinned elves, you have like dark-skinned dwarves and fat dwarves and like thinner dwarves, etc., etc. So you have a lot of like diversity within the like sort of race slash species group, which makes it really interesting and fantastic. And I really like this series so much, and I just find it so incredible that it started out as a sort of funny, entertaining gag manga, and now it has reached this sort of like epic, terrifying, almost like horrific proportion in its like world building, like the actual dungeon and what is going on in there is it's like revealed to be something really sinister. But it doesn't lose the funny either. Like, I just really love this series. I can't wait to see how it ends. And my only gripe, basically, currently, is that I would want some more character development for Lio specifically, because I feel like every other character has gotten some development and has gotten to reach further in their character potential than the gimmick that they started out with. Except for Laios and Falin specifically. And Falin necessarily hasn't had the opportunity yet because she's spent a lot of the series basically fridged. So, all that said, I still really love this series, and I gave Volume 10 4 stars. I am really enjoying this so much. And then the last thing that I read in the month of September was Siren Queen by Nghi. And I quite enjoyed this. I mostly enjoyed the premise of this. This idea of basically having like the golden age of Hollywood be the center of the story, but with the like Hollywood executives and studio heads being sort of these demonic fey creatures, and the starlets and stars make these Faustian deals with them in order to gain immortality through film. That's basically the gist, and it is a story about othering and Orientalism and trying to find your own place and trying to rise above the expectations and sort of the box that other people have decided to put you in. The main character is very ambitious and very almost selfish. And she's very much someone who always tries to make the best of every single situation concerning herself first. She is not without empathy, and she's not without concern for her friends, but I really liked that the main character was ambitious and ruthless. That was one of the things that I really liked about this book, that it went there and it didn't shy away from showing a female character who can be ruthless, because like unfortunately in a lot of media, not only are people scared to show a feminine female presenting character act like that without the veneer of masculinity, but usually audiences as well are very judgmental and vindictive towards those characters. So I really liked that I got to be in this character's point of view and in their shoes the whole time, and got to know them and their whole thought process and character arc and everything. And this was fantastic. I really liked this story. I will say that I think that this story was very experimental. It was trying a lot of like new things and playing with aesthetic and description in a way that you didn't always know if things were actually magical and supernatural, or if this was just something that the character was sort of like, if this was more like a metaphor. And I like that. I will say that because the book focuses so much on this sort of like aesthetic and lush description, There were a couple of continuity errors that I spotted, and I probably would not have noticed them if the book wasn't so focused on the descriptive and like sort of the aesthetics, because then you start sort of like picking out those details more. So there were a couple of instances where, for example, the character is wearing a red dress, and 2 pages in they're wearing a blue dress without any single explanation or a sort of like even a hint towards something supernatural happening. So that's just a thing. I will say also that the pacing was a little bit off, especially in the end. I did feel that there probably didn't need to be an epilogue. It could have just ended without it. And I also thought that this other character that was sort of interjecting into the story a couple of times could have just been axed completely. They didn't need to really be there. They didn't add anything to the story, and they were so underdeveloped as a character that they were more like distracting than anything else. Other than that, I really enjoyed this. I had a fun time reading it. And I am really enjoying books that are taking risks with the narrative and trying out new things. And I feel like Nivo really like did that. And I'm like, even if I didn't like this as much as the Singing Hills cycle cycle novellas that she's written, I still thought that this was a really nice and cool project. And I'm glad that I read it. I gave this 3.5 stars. And there you have it. These are all of the things that I read in September. They were not many, but they were quality over quantity, I would say. And if you got this far, please leave me some sort of monster or creature emoji, because I read Delicious in Dungeons, and also Siren Queen has a lot of like monsters and like monstrousness in it. So leave me some kind of a monster emoji down in the comments so that I know that you were here. And tell me in the comments, are you interested in picking up any of these manga series or Siren Queen? I will very much be interested to know, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye bye!